The morning Daniel Hargrove arrived to demolish Eleanor Whitfield's home, the sky was the color of ash. He stepped out of his black Range Rover and stood surveying the row of houses slated for demolition. Most were already empty. 43 properties cleared in 6 weeks, clean, efficient, profitable. Only one remained. Number 14, Sycamore Lane. The house was small and impossibly old, white paint peeling at the edges, a front porch sagging to one side, window boxes full of purple lavender swaying in the October wind. Against the backdrop of muddy construction equipment and steel fencing, it looked like a painting from another century. Daniel checked his watch. 8:47 a.m. The Hargrove Luxury Residences development was 12 weeks behind schedule, and every day of delay cost him $40,000. He had investors demanding updates and a mayor expecting results by spring. He straightened his tie and walked to the door. He knocked 3 times. Silence. Then again, harder. "Mrs. Whitfield, my name is Daniel Hargrove. We've sent 4 letters and 3 certified notices. The legal transfer of this property was completed 2 weeks ago. I'm asking you as a courtesy to open the door." Silence. Then, slowly, the door opened. Eleanor Whitfield was 81 years old, white hair pinned neatly at the nape of her neck, hands curved at the knuckles from arthritis, dark eyes in a deeply lined face that was, despite everything, absolutely alert. She wore a pale blue cardigan and held a cup of tea as though she'd been expecting a neighbor. She looked at Daniel with an expression he couldn't name. Not fear, not anger, something closer to recognition. "I know who you are," she said. "Come in," he had expected shouting. Tears, a lawyer. "Not tea." "Come in," she repeated, and turned back into the house. He followed her. Inside, the house was warm and achingly full of a life fully lived. Books stacked 2 deep on every shelf. Framed photographs covering the walls, decades of faces of summers and Christmases made permanent. A worn armchair sat close to a wood-burning fireplace. The smell of lavender and old paper reached him all at once. Daniel stood in the living room and felt, for the first time in years, genuinely uncomfortable. Eleanor set 2 cups of tea on the coffee table. She settled into the armchair across from him and watched him steadily. "How old are you?" she asked. 38. "And your mother? Is she well?" The question struck him like a cold wave. His mother, Catherine Hargrove, had died 2 years ago. Breast cancer. She had been 59. She had never seen the offices he'd built in her honor, never seen the bronze plaque with her name on it in the lobby. "My mother passed away," he said, keeping his voice even. 2 years ago." Eleanor's expression softened. "I know, I'm sorry. She was a remarkable woman." Daniel went very still. "You knew my mother?" She reached down beside the armchair and lifted. A worn photo album, the thick cardboard, kind with plastic sleeves that hadn't been made since the 1980s. She set it on the coffee table and turned it toward him. "Page 7, she said. His hands were not entirely steady. "Page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5, page 6, page 7. He stopped breathing. 2 women, young and laughing, arms around each other's shoulders outside a hospital entrance. One was Eleanor, those same watchful eyes unmistakable even decades younger. The other was his mother. Catherine Hargrove at perhaps 30 years old, dark hair loose, laughing with her whole face in a way he had never, in his memory, seen her laugh. That was 1987, Eleanor said. She had just been told she was in remission. "The first time?" "The first time? Your mother had her first cancer diagnosis at 29. You were 4 years old. You wouldn't remember." He didn't. He had known nothing about it. "She was a single mother," Eleanor continued, her voice careful. Her husband had left the year before. She had a little boy to raise, a part-time job at the school cafeteria, and a diagnosis the doctors said was aggressive and very expensive to treat. Daniel set the album. "Down. She lived 3 doors down from me on Porter. Street, quiet, private, proud in the way people are when they have very little and refuse to let anyone see it." A faint smile crossed Eleanor's face. She never asked for help. Nearly broke herself not needing it. What happened? I noticed, Eleanor said. I noticed she was thinner. That you were wearing the same clothes to school more often. That her kitchen light had stopped coming on in the evenings. She paused. I brought dinner over one night. She tried to refuse it. The treatment she needed wasn't covered by insurance, Eleanor continued. The gap was $32,000. In 1987, for a woman in her position, it might as well have been $1 million. How did she pay for it? Eleanor met his eyes directly. She didn't, she said. I did. The silence that followed was the loudest thing Daniel Hargrove had ever sat inside. My husband Harold and I had savings, Eleanor said. He worked at the post office 31 years. We were careful people, and we looked at your mother and at you, 4 years old with those serious eyes, and we decided. She folded her hands. We decided some things matter more than a savings account. She didn't know, Daniel said. It wasn't a question. He had known his mother's pride like the layout of their apartment, by heart, in the dark. We arranged it through the hospital, had it listed as an anonymous assistance grant. Eleanor's voice was quiet and steady. She would never have allowed it otherwise. Daniel stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at his Range Rover, at the crew, at the fencing surrounding the ground where 43 homes had been. His mother had lived. She had beaten that cancer, worked and scraped and built a life, put him through college, told him over and over that he could do anything. She had lived. Because of this woman, because of a postal worker and his wife who emptied their savings for a neighbor they barely knew. He turned around. Why didn't you ever tell her? Because she didn't need to know, Eleanor said. She needed to heal. She needed to raise her son. She didn't need the weight of a debt she couldn't repay. Some gifts are only gifts if you ask for nothing back. Did she ever find out? A pause longer than the others. Before she died, she came to see me. She sat where you're sitting. She held my hands. Eleanor's voice dropped. I think she'd always known. She waited until she had to say it. She thanked me, and I told her it was the greatest privilege of my life. Daniel reached into his jacket pocket. His fingers found the envelope before his mind did. A plain white rectangle his assistant had handed him 3 days ago. Mrs. Whitfield has something she wants to give you in person. He looked at it now. His name on the front. Handwriting he recognized in his bones. Birthday cards, grocery lists left on the kitchen counter. His mother's handwriting. She left that with me 2 months before she passed, Eleanor said. Her exact words, give it to him when the time is right. His hands were shaking as he broke the seal. My darling Daniel, when you were 4 years old, I was very sick and trying with everything I had not to let you see it. I almost didn't survive, not because the treatment failed, but because I nearly never received it. Eleanor Whitfield and her husband Harold saved my life. They gave everything they had without telling me, without asking for a single thing in return. Remember where you came from. Not just the hard work and the ambition, those are yours. But remember that you exist because someone with very little chose to give it anyway. The people the world overlooks are sometimes the ones quietly holding everything together. Please take care of Eleanor. She will never ask you to. That is exactly why she deserves it. All my love every day forever. Mom Daniel Hargrove sat in that small, warm room and did not move for a long time. Outside, the clock turned. $40,000, 80. He could not find inside himself the person who had cared about any of it. When he finally stood, Eleanor was watching him with those same steady eyes. I'm not demolishing this house, he said. I know, she said. He looked around the room, at the photographs, the fireplace, the lavender on the sill, and felt something give way inside him. Something dense and long mistaken for strength. I'm redesigning the entire development, he said. Half the units, affordable housing. Real rents for real families? He paused. I'm naming it after my mother, Eleanor smiled then. A full, unhurried smile that made her look, for a moment, like the young woman in the photograph. That, she said softly, sounds exactly like Catherine's son. He stayed 2 more hours. He drank her tea and asked her to tell him the stories behind every photograph. She did, and he listened the way he hadn't listened to anything in years. When he finally rose to leave, he paused in the doorway. "You'll stay," he said. "In this house?" "For as long as you want. That's not a negotiation." Eleanor lifted her chin with quiet dignity. "It never was," she said. 3 months later, the Hargrove Luxury Residences was relaunched as the Catherine Project, 40% affordable units, a community center, a rooftop garden open to the public. The papers called it a PR move, a wealthy developer's convenient attack of conscience. Daniel never tried to explain it. Some things are not for public consumption. Some things live only in a white envelope and a dead woman's handwriting and a small house where lavender grows in the window boxes and a photograph hangs on the wall of 2 young women, laughing outside a hospital, arms around each other, squinting into the light, on the day one of them was told she would live. Eleanor Whitfield remained at number 14, Sycamore Lane. Her rent was 0, her home untouched, and every Sunday morning, without fail, Daniel Hargrove knocked on her door. She always had tea ready. She had always known he would come.